Good afternoon and welcome to 365 Days of Stories with Theo Mayer, day 59, and hopefully I'll be able to finish the story of the legend of the three beautiful princesses. So I left the story off with Caliga coming and sharing with them that the Spanish cavaliers had requested them, the princesses, to fly with them to Cordova, which was their home, and to become their wives. Now, I will tell you that though I made it seem quite simple, there was a lot of discussion that went back and forth. And one of the things that Caliga, it seemed, she was given charge of these three princesses when their mother died. And their mother had asked the duenna to watch over them and make sure that their futures were positive. And so Caliga had really played this thing off in an incredible way. And in so doing, she had really enlivened the true desires of the princesses. She'd, in her way of presenting things, had gotten the princesses to reveal what was truly in their hearts. And, the discussion had gone back and forth. Of course, who is kind of being vexed in the whole situation is their father, the Moorish king, Muhammad, the left-handed. But it came out that what were they to do? He, held sway over them through bolts and closed, locked doors. He kept them more like prisoners than daughters, especially in their most beautiful time of their lives, the time when, as young women, they're blooming. And here, the Spanish cavaliers, even though there was some danger involved with running off with them, some uncertainty, they were returning to the homeland of their mother and hopefully a life of freedom. So it didn't take long for them to, or at least Zeta made the decision very quickly, and she seemed to leave the other two sisters. So the duenna, Caliga, went off. And when she returned, it was clear that much of the plan that had been made had been done so through her guile and her persuasion. Hussein Baba, the renegado, the one who was watching over the prisoners, had certainly been brought into the fold with the whole affair. The Spanish cavaliers were, of course, providing everything that was needed for a successful elopement. The plan was made. Now, the Alahambra, back in the day of the Moorish kings, had many underground passages that were constructed through the rock itself. One for escape in case of some sudden attack upon the Alahambra and the life of the Moorish king, but also to go secretly out to conduct business or some endeavors. They would go through these tunnels, and the tunnels led to a variety of places, including to the banks of the Zenal River. And it is there that it had been agreed through one of those passages, Hussein Baba had made sure it was clear, and he would be conducting the princesses and the duenna through that passage. Now, the night of the escape came, and all the doors of the Tower of the Princesses were locked, bolted, and the Alhambra fell into a deep and silent sleep. Around midnight, Caliga was out on the balcony awaiting to hear the call from Hussein Baba. And when she heard it, she took a rope ladder that had been constructed and tied it to the balcony. The princesses were expectantly waiting. The duenna went down first, followed by Zeta and Zoraida. Zoraida got to the balcony and looked down at the stairs. She looked out upon the dark night, and then she turned and looked back into her silken apartment where she had lived so much of her life. Within the apartment was safety and security. Outside, there was the juicy future with her Spanish Christian husband. Inside there was security and safety, and she waffled back and forth, her heart fluttering like the wings of the butterfly. And the more she hesitated, the more her heart fluttered. When she would think of her Spanish cavalier, her tender foot would immediately step onto that first rung of the rope ladder. But then when she would think of her father, she would withdraw that foot. Well, time was passing. Her sisters were looking up in dismay. The duenna was scolding her for not knowing what to do. And Hussein Baba was cursing. Time as it passed was going to be either the undoing or the doing of this endeavor. For the guards made their rounds according to the clock. Zoraida waffled back and forth. She could not decide, and finally there was a tramp, a step of the guards as they began to make their patrol. Hussein Baba called up to the princess, "It is now or never. The patrols are starting. If you do not come with us, we will have to leave you." Zeta and Zoraida, you can imagine how distraught they were. They'd always been together, and here their sister wasn't coming. She couldn't make up her mind. Zoraida, in a fit, in a moment, she took that rope ladder, untied it from the balcony, and cast it off. "My fate is sealed," she said. "Fly, fly, my sisters, and Allah be with you." The group turned and they entered the passageway, and groping the way in the darkness, they found their way to a gate at the end of the passage and opened up onto the Zenal River, and there waiting for them at the Zenal River were the Spanish cavaliers with fleet steeds saddled and ready. The lover of Zoraida was distraught, like, one can't believe that Zoraida did not come, but there was no time. Zeta and Zoraida leapt up behind their lovers, and the duenna behind Hussein Baba. And off they went, heading for Cordova, heading for the pass between the mountains, which would bring them into freedom. They thought they would be in good way. They had fleet horses, and off they went. They were running as fast, as quickly as they could, through those trails and through those mountains, and off they went. And at a certain point, from the ramparts of the Alahambra were heard beating drums. Their escape had been found. Hussein Baba said, "We are discovered. We must fly like the wind, and perhaps we will be able to make it to the pass before the word is out." But as they looked back to the Alahambra, From one of the towers, a flame was lit. This flame was to stand as it was like a call, it was a message to the other towers throughout the roads and byways that something was amiss, and the warriors, the guards, were to be on watch. And this fire began to be lit from tower to tower along the roadways. There was a certain pass that Hussein Baba knew of, and he led them there, and he said, we must go as fast as we can. And they put spurs to their horses and were just running. And there was a bridge, the bridge of Pinos it was called, and they were heading for that bridge as quickly as they could. And when they got to it, the hope of Hussein was the guards of the tower would not have seen it and would not be ready for them when they crossed the bridge. But when they got within sight of the bridge, there they could see the flames were lit and there were lights all along the bridge. He stopped. He rose up in his stirrups and his horse, and he went off down the side of the river and began to make his way upriver from the bridge. And eventually he got to a spot where he just plunged his horse into this rather fast-moving and raging river. The cavaliers told the princesses to hang on with their lives and plunged in after him. The duenna was behind Hussein, and she had been clutching so hard through the whole ride. When she got to the river, her fear was escalated like 2 or 3 times what it had been before. And Hussein said, don't hang on so tight. Fear not. Hang on to my belt, and we will get across just fine. Hussein gets to the other side and comes out. The young cavaliers and the princesses, they make it to the other side, and they begin to quickly make their way up through discreet trails to this one summit. And when they get to the summit, they stop, and everyone realized that Kaliga was no longer on the horse of Hussein Baba. She'd held on to the belt, but the belt had somehow, in the rapids in the river, had come undone, and she'd been swept away. The princesses were, of course, completely upset by this new unfolding, the woman who'd watched over them throughout their entire lives, but off they went. And through back trails and ways that no one would go on, that Hussein Baba knew, they eventually made their way to Cordova, where the princesses and the Spanish cavaliers, of course, were greeted with great rejoicing. Princesses were home, and family was still there because their mother, in fact, had been from Cordova as well. Well, the rejoicings were great. The princesses eventually were baptized into the Christian faith, and after that were able to marry their young and youthful husbands. Hussein Baba, he was taken care of quite well by those families for all that he had provided. And, well, we might want to think about the duenna. Did she make it? She did. Kaliga did. She floated downstream for quite a ways. As dusk came, a fisherman who was out found her, pulled her to shore, and was amazed by what he considered his catch of the day. There's no more told of her, but it is said that she avoided ever being known by Muhammad the left-handed ever again. Now, I'm going to stop this here for a moment. I will continue another video to finish this for this day. So when you finish this one, go right on to the next, and we'll have the finish of the legend of the 3 princesses.